Hello, hi Jonathan.
Hi, Shirok. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. I can. How's my voice to you?
There's a little bit of background noise where you are, Shirok. Like a
Um,
sh.
must be my fan. Let me see what I can do about that.
Is
Yeah,
it now?
yeah, that's gone now. That's perfect.
Ah,
Whatever you
okay.
did.
Okay. I
Yeah.
switched to my headphone mic. So how have
Okay,
you been?
perfect. Excellent. In great form, actually. I've
Ah, that's
moved
good.
from the south of the continent in Italy to the north of the continent in Ireland, so a bit of a
Ah,
temperature
you're back.
change in the last 2 days. You know,
Ah, okay. So it's colder where you are now.
it is. Yeah, slightly. Yeah,
Hmm.
not too bad.
That's a good thing for us Pakistanis. Whenever it gets colder, we're happy about it. But I guess it's the opposite in the EU.
Yeah, well, I guess the EU is like Pakistan. I imagine in Pakistan in the south you've got really warm, and then you go all the way to the Himalayas where you can have like freezing
True,
temperatures.
true.
You've got
Yeah.
like a vast possibility. Whereas Ireland is just a little rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, so things don't vary
Okay.
that much, you know.
That's true. That's true. But I guess
Uh,
in Pakistan, the thing is that most of the population is within this mid to south area, so there are not a lot of people in the northern area. So then most of us
uh,
we suffer from the heat more than the cold.
oh, okay. Well, fair
Yeah.
enough. I didn't know that. Like, I haven't been
Yeah.
yet, but I'm looking forward to it. It's on the cards.
Yeah. Yeah. You
What
definitely have to come here now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I love is I have never seen your background before, but you look like you
Oh
have
yeah.
a teenage gamer room. It's like my boys would love your room, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. See you know my you can say my motto that you should never grow old. So yeah, I keep that in my
You're
room as well. Yeah.
you're living the
You can.
dream, huh?
Yeah, you can see the cube. Oh, sorry, the egg chair over there. There's a
Oh,
massage chair over
fantastic.
there. The plasma ball is also up over somewhere over here. I can't really get it.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Oh, this one.
Brilliant.
Yes. Yeah.
Ec-
And the katana is
Excellent.
also there, but you can probably see it. It's too small.
Fantastic. So
Anyway,
you're ready for the meta universe, huh?
yes, yeah, already set up. But I guess VR didn't really take off as much as we would have wanted it to, because it's a very good technology, but I couldn't really see any practical outcome from it.
Yeah. I'm a little bit behind the times. I have a 3D printer
I
here,
saw
but
that.
that's
Yeah,
about it.
I
Haven't quite got to the meta
to the
world yet. I've had a
practical.
few
Ah,
conversations around it, but actually, I talked to one guy this week, and he owns a company called Super World App, and they've basically
mm.
got a copy of the Earth, and they've
Ah,
broken
okay.
it into 64 billion pieces of real estate, which you can buy, and then it becomes basically like a virtual marketing world. So I don't know
Mm.
how fast we're going to go in that direction, but things are
Let's
kicking
see.
off a
Yeah,
little bit.
true, true. But I guess that's the thing about technology.
Erano तुम लोग पढ़े हो तुम बोले
You can't really say that where you're going to end up with once you get into something. For example, Bitcoin, it was supposed to be, the next thing which breaks the internet and replaces the internet basically. I shouldn't really say
Yeah.
Bitcoin, but generally blockchain, but nothing happened. So you
Well,
never
we're
know
going
with
through different
technology.
waves. We're on the fourth. I'm a little bit older than you, Sharuk,
Of
and
course.
I got very excited in the 1990s when I started working in technology. A new technology called WAP or WAP came out, which is Wireless
Ah,
Access
yes, I
Protocol.
remember that. It was before the
So I was
GPRS, right?
It was actually, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
like
that was WX.
I was part of some team who were actually deciding which protocol on the telecom will we put data. Will we put it on SMS
Mm,
or MAP, GSM data? Will we put it on USSD? All of these types of conversations. Built a couple of secure banking applications for Norwegian banks, but
mm,
nothing took off because there wasn't really the bandwidth nor the terminals.
mm.
So really, we
That's
were
true. Yeah.
doing things that really didn't get realized until the bandwidth got better with 3G, for example, and then the
Mm,
terminals came in with the iPhone in about 2007. But we'd done all the same type of work 10 years previous, but the how would you say, the ecosystem wasn't ready in terms of
Ready for it.
bandwidth
Yeah.
and the terminals. And so
Mm,
I think as a technologist and an early adopter, you get excited a bit too early. But
mm.
I think
That's
what
true.
it allows you to do is to put a 10-year plan in place to be ready for when that hits the
Mm.
ground, if it does, you know.
But I guess that's also how you get the competitive advantage. If you're ready for it before it was cool, like they say it, so that's when you you get the edge. Otherwise, you miss out. So just for example, with the blockchain, none of the Pakistani people with VR, with I would say even the internet, there were only a few Pakistani companies that actually embraced their technology when it was new, and now we are behind in almost all of them.
Oh wow, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like it's really coming. We're in the fourth wave of at the moment,
Yes.
and so the money is going up. The way I look at
Yeah.
that one is, Bitcoin wants to be looked at as a stable asset, but it's still very volatile.
It is.
So
It is.
gold
Mm,
gold is at, I think it's 11 trillion. So as it becomes a percent, oh yeah, is a trillion. So Bitcoin has passed 1 trillion, and it's somewhere between 1 and 2 at the moment. The
mm.
closer it gets to the valuation of gold worldwide, the less volatile and more
It
stable
will
it
become.
becomes, and the
Yeah.
more accepted to be as an asset. So it's definitely going the right direction, but it might be
Mm.
another 5 years. It's not. It's an event dependent, not a time dependent thing.
Yeah, true, true. And also, I would say that with the Bitcoin, it really depends on the adoption of key stakeholders such as governments and banks. Because at the moment, of course, everyone can use Bitcoin, but it depends on do you actually want to trust the person who you're sending money to or receiving money from? So the actual aspect, which was that you trust them not because of the bank that they're using, but because of
Sure,
themselves, that is actually lost because now you don't trust anyone who's using Bitcoin because you never know who the other person is.
absolutely. But then two
Yeah.
countries have adopted it. El Salvador has adopted. Central African
Oh, they have.
Republic has adopted it as
Oh,
legal
go ahead. Okay.
tender.
Oh,
But
that's
it
good.
acts like, because I'm involved in banking, it's more like a bank to bank transfer because it's not that fast Bitcoin. So the
Mm.
layer
That's
one
true.
that's
Yeah.
on top of it with the Lightning Network allows you and
Mm.
me and loads, and
Yeah.
could be equivalent to like Visa and MasterCard. It
Yeah.
allows lots of
With real
transactions
time
very
transactions.
fast.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Well,
And then the
yeah, kind of.
validation comes later.
Yeah, they offline do the transaction and then they revalidate with Bitcoin then every so
Yeah.
many minutes as such. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
getting there. It just takes time.
True. True.
Excellent. So I want to say of the group that we actually have Saud on the call at the
Yeah.
moment.
Southern Fawaz is also here.
Hi
Yeah,
guys, how is everyone?
Hello. All good,
brilliant.
Alhamdulillah. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to test my camera for a second, then I'm going to go off
Sure.
because there's a Wi-Fi issue here.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
guys see me?
Yes, we can.
Hi,
Okay,
Saud.
because
How you
I'm.
doing?
Hey, Jonathan. I'm actually on the roof, so it's kind of like I don't have
Ah,
Wi-Fi, clean Wi-Fi access here.
seems to be working okay, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to keep it on, I think
All
that's
right.
fine.
Let's
Yeah.
keep it on. Let's keep it on.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay
Brilliant.
close to
I always suspect
close to the router.
if Saud is in the roof, I always suspect that he might be a vampire or something. So it's kind of appropriate.
You're still
You never
suspecting?
know.
I thought this was
You never know. This was obvious now.
this is just
This was
this is
already a
just
fact.
this is just confirmation. The only thing that's not right is you're standing the right way up, or maybe you've turned the camera around.
Yeah, you know
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Hey, you know what? That's
You can
probably it.
you can always do after post what it's called. I forget the name. Post processing. Yeah, you can always do post processing.
Absolutely,
Well,
absolutely.
when you
Uh,
lived like 600 years, you know all the tricks. So
Yeah,
I'm pulling all the stops now.
it's less obvious.
Exactly.
So anyway, I guess
wait,
we can come to our main topic for
sure.
today.
Yeah.
Or John, do you want to add say something beforehand before we
No,
go?
no. Please go ahead,
Okay.
Sharuk.
Okay.
Please.
So the topic that we have today is in a nutshell, it's how to make money with technology. But
Hmm.
to be more, you can say elaborate. It's basically how do you get from your zeroth customer to your first
Yeah.
customer using
Hmm.
technology, and then how
Hmm.
do you scale your business from the first to the hundredth, like we discussed earlier as well, Jonathan. And then how do you
Sure.
go from the 100 to the 1,000 to the 100,000 and then to million and onwards. So I would ask you, Jonathan, on what's been your experience so far in all of the companies that you've worked with, all of the countries you've seen. How
Yeah.
have they embraced technology and how have they made or not made it like a core piece of the business and not just a supporting factor, which is what we usually see in the Pakistani startup culture, at least, that they say that
Mm,
technology infrastructure especially is just how we will expand our business at a later stage. We don't need to do it before we start the business, for example. How do you
mm,
see it happening across some of the other businesses and countries?
Sure. So I would say, just to give people maybe context, I've worked in a lot
Yeah,
of
sure.
Europe. I've worked in Thailand and Malaysia, in Asia, and then in the United States. So kind of a little bit of a
Yeah.
sort of cross spectrum there. And mostly big companies, which makes a bit of a difference. And I've worked with about 5 startups, very hands on as well. So, but
Mm,
mostly bigger corporations. And
mm,
you've described 3 situations which I see very different: the zeroth, our first customer, then scaling a little bit, and then the hundredth to build up.
yeah.
For
That's
me,
good.
it's rarely that technology is the driver. Technology for me is the answer. So, what it means is somebody has a need, a customer has a need. And really, what you need, what I found, and this doesn't matter whether it's a big company or not, is the customer has a need, and then you want to provide a service. And that service is sort of supported by technology.
mm.
Whereas I don't know if any of you have seen the film by Kevin Costner, and it was something about him building a baseball stadium, and there was a ghost that said, "Build it,
Oh
and they
yeah,
will
yeah, yeah. Of
come."
course.
You know,
Yes, yes, yes.
and that's a unicorn, a very, very rare event.
Mm,
In most cases, the customer has a need, and then a couple of in ingenuitive or innovative people come up with options and answers, and one or two or multiple of them get adopted. So from going to 0 to 1, it's rarely a technology answer. It's like we kind of get passionate about. I got passionate about WAP, which probably nobody knows,
mm.
wireless access protocol,
I
and then
remember some of it,
Bitcoin and all these
but not too
all of
much. Yeah.
these things. Um,
Yeah.
and the technology can be around for a long time before it actually answers a real question of somebody's need or want. So for me, getting that first customer is more about understanding the market, understanding a particular
Mm,
avatar, understanding a particular customer. So, like I sent you earlier, and we can talk about it later, is I have a
yeah.
very clear idea and I understand a particular type of customer very well. So, I kind of am aligned with what the current needs are. And then, as changes are happening, what their micro changes in them, which can even turn into products or services, will
Mm,
be. So for me, that going from 0 to 1, and I think was there a famous guy, Peter Thiel, wrote a book about going from
Yeah, yeah.
zero to
yeah. Zero to one.
um, is really about, okay, well, let's say I know Saud, relatively well over the last couple of years, or yourself, and as we get to know each other, we'll know, oh, he might want something. And what is it that I can provide, whether that's a technology or a service that would amplify his message, or that
Hmm.
would support background services, we can call it back end stuff, or
Yeah.
front end bring in sales. So any one of those 3 things, in my mind, I'm going, which one of those 3 things could I help Saud with? I'm just using him as an example to bring him from 0 to 1, or in his case,
Hmm.
224 to 100,000, or whatever, well,
Yeah.
whatever
Whatever
that
is the
is.
new number. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not but like if we take South's case, and just because for those of you who don't know, he has a great platform called Hopistan. He went from 0 to 1, and I'm not sure. Maybe what? Let me. I've answered my question from a tech point. What brought you from 0 to 1, listener? You can't count your sons out, but who was and
Yeah.
why did that? How did that? I don't want to even say anything. You tell us.
That's actually very interesting. I didn't even think about it this way. So I think for me, the 0 to 1 was clearly driven by technology enabled, right? I mean, the
Mm,
idea was to share something positive with another human being, and the other human being connected with me through Facebook. That was basic idea. And then that human being said to me, is like, look, I think we should go to a WhatsApp group where it can be more personal, because a lot of people have difficulty sharing um, certain things, let's say, on an open platform like
Mm.
Facebook. Even though you can have, you can have a special group and
Privacy,
all of
yeah.
that,
It's
you can do all of that stuff in Facebook as well. But at that time, the 0 to 1 was purely through Facebook. And then, and this person, I'm not going to name them because they're a
Sure.
private person, but he was right, because what happened from 1 to 100, and then from, let's say now we're at around 250. It's, I mean, again, it's through WhatsApp. It's primarily
But
through
but
WhatsApp and word of mouth.
can I say that I think you echoed what I said is the 0 to 1 came from a human request, came from a need or a
Oh
want or
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
desire
Of
from
course,
somebody. It
of
wasn't
Mm.
course.
technology helped it happen, but it was
Yeah.
actually somebody's desire, want, need, or
Yeah.
whatever that
Oh sure.
actually overcame that inertia sound.
Absolutely.
So I have a comment here. So what I've seen with most startups is I'm of course referring to the discussion we've had before regarding this session. Because otherwise some businesses don't follow the pattern that I'm going to comment on. So what I've
Mm.
seen most
Sure.
startups do is that they'd say that, okay, I have a need, let's say a food delivery app, a very simple application where someone calls me. So we don't have the technology and figure out right now in this hypothetical. So someone will call them, they will say, I need this, this and this from this and this restaurant, so bring me this, I will pay this much money. So whatever, however everything works. So they will
Mm.
go, they will get the order, they will give away the food, they will get the money and so on. The challenge is that at the start of the business, from 0 to 1, or I would say even from 0 to a couple thousand, they don't have the technology figured out. And the
Yeah.
challenge is that once they get to 1000, they are already in a very messy situation, covering up for what they didn't use technology for. And now
Yeah.
they think that, let's, okay, now it's time to add technology to the mix. They don't have
Correct. Correct.
technology built in from the start. So
Yes.
that's my basic question, in that they use technology as a support, but
Yeah.
not from the 0 to 1. They use it very late in the
Correct.
in
I
their
agree.
business cycle. So
I agree.
how do you see this happening in other businesses, and do you think this is actually a good idea, because this it allows you to, you can say, fail without too much of a technology investment?
Should I go first or?
Sure,
Sure, sure,
please. Yeah.
sure, sure, yeah.
Okay, sure. So I 100% endorse what you just said, Shark, because I think that most platforms now have to have a tech and a content component embedded in their DNA from the start, at inception.
Yes.
Because what happens is most of these are add-ons which are ad hoc, right? So
Mm,
and you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference in the culture. You can tell the difference in the delivery of whatever product or solution you're doing. Because if you are tech infused, or I would also throw content in that mix, because I actually
mm,
do believe that content and tech are kind of like cousins. They're like feed off of
together,
each
yeah.
other. Um, if you don't build your house with these bricks at the foundation level, it creates a very, let's just say, not only just less nimble, but I think it just, as my son would use that word, it's like a very janky looking, sort of,
Setup.
a very inefficient setup, you can call it. And it shows in the way your teams operate. Again, there's a Hopestani. I'm not going to name him, but when I was working with his team, I was very impressed that his team is far more efficient than most startups that I've met in Pakistan. And the reason is because they apply a lot of the productivity, um, let's say, frameworks, whether it's Scrum, whether it's dashboarding, whether it's doing BMCs and VPCs, but they literally did it from day zero.
Mm,
Literally, it was started from the very start, and they held their ground, and they got a lot of resistance internally, culture-wise, because we were like, well, this is not how work is done. We can do this 2 years from now. And this guy who is leading this effort basically put his foot down. So it's impressive to see that people, visionaries, who understand the value of technology, productivity, content, whatever, they make sure that it's embedded at inception, at foundation. At later stage, you can obviously do it. It's going to cost you more, and it's not going to integrate well with your culture. And you will definitely find resistance when the people who started, your platform now have to learn and unlearn, and then relearn, a
Mm,
lot of these protocols, or like, I mean, we can get into the examples later, but it creates a learning curve within the organization, which, let's just say, the incumbents are going to resist.
mm. Jonathan, what's your
Okay.
take on this?
So I'm an ex-techie. I wouldn't even say ex. I still am. Started with a VIC 20 when I was 8 years of age, right?
Wow.
Still messing with it. Working on a project with AI vision now. But one of the things I learned from running the bigger programs is when something needs to scale, you need to only do it in one place. So if you
Mm,
take code, with any tech people are on here, some people copy and paste code into different parts of a bigger application, but then that leaves 2 points of failure. So there's a book called Clean Code, and it's kind of all the principles
Hmm.
behind developing proper processes and thinking
mm,
clear end to end. So I have I'll call it my tagline: do it once. If you're doing it
Hmm.
twice, you haven't put the right process in place or you haven't coded it right. And so everything, like, I have a startup now at the moment, and everything is done once. If it has to be done twice, well, the question is, well, why isn't it in a wiki? Why isn't it documented so that the next person who has to do it, you make the assumption it's not going to be you? And so I'm agreeing with South, but actually having those, working with the idea of processifying something every time you touch it makes it scalable in itself. Because in essence, technology is just a consolidated process. So I'd agree with
mm,
South, but I would just mention the word that the key technology is to have a process mindset towards what you're doing. So sometimes you don't need actual code, but the process itself is your technology. So somebody's
mm.
following a
Yeah.
flow and they've agreed on a script or they've agreed on steps. That might be the technology. Sometimes it goes as far as code and applications
Mm,
and stuff like that. But having that sort of do it once mentality, and if I do it once, I do it so that the next person who comes to it would be able to do it as well, if not better than me, from the documentation or the intuitiveness of the flow that I leave behind me. So clean up and improve as you touch something when you're building an organization. And I think that kind of takes experience, or having haven't trained in a way that you know that if you want to scale, that everything you touch, you assume you're not going to ever touch it again. The next person will have to make it as easy as possible for them. And then you're automatically introducing the capability to grow and scale as you work with the team that you're working with.
mm. And so I feel like this is something that is necessary, but you can say that not everyone is capable of doing it. Not just because they don't have the technical skills, but they don't have the experience on what technology to use and how to deploy it. That's what I understand from both of you. So then my question is that for the startups or any business who doesn't really have a CTO, for example,
Hmm.
what would you say is a good approach for them? Is it just better to hire someone? Is it better to find a co-founder who's a CTO, or do you think they should acquire the skills themselves? For example, I remember that, or even now, I do most of my IT myself, or not even IT, most of the technology parts for my all of my businesses. I do it myself. I just have to learn it, and then I
Hmm.
use it, deploy any open source, any sort of small scripts, and you can say small parts of the applications myself. But I guess that's because I have some education in computer science as well. But what would you say is the right approach to go about doing this if someone has a technical founder and if someone doesn't have a technical person in their you can say shareholder structure, but overall they don't have access to one?
I mean, that's a very, very tricky question because it's quite open-ended, Shahrukh, I would say.
True, true. Of course,
Um,
it depends on a lot of things, but still, just
yeah,
a general
because
idea.
you can have a very sharp CTO and he is not aligned with your growth strategy.
That's true.
You could
That's true.
be a believer in blitz scaling. You know, it's Reid Hoffman's book, Blitz Scaling. I don't know if you guys have read it, but because when you mentioned this, I was kind of going reviewing through some of it, and that book really talks about speed over efficiency. Like just go fast, break things, fix things on the fly. Don't worry about efficiency. Efficiency comes later, but you gotta be nimble and learn quickly. And what I've seen is a lot of times CTOs and CFOs kind of hold you back from that speed.
Hmm.
So if you are really, really trying to scale, because I mean the topic of this discussion is around scaling, and then and not just scaling, but hyperscaling at some point, right? So you're
Yeah.
you're kind of following Moore's law or like this sort of exponential growth curve. Because if scale is linear, then nobody's interested. Like that's like opening up a shop after a shop after a shop, brick and mortar. That too is not even linear. That too has fixed costs. So the point is that I typically am very concerned when I'm dealing with tech folks. I'm from the tech sector, and I
Hmm.
think that a lot of the people that you will come across, you can get it from an app, from a software, from a consultant. But if you're going to bring somebody over and have them as part of your capital structure, or give them shares or pay them heavy salaries, and they're you know when I think of a CTO and I'm looking at technology to define my solution, really, then this person has to be fully aligned with the pace that I want to go or grow, the look and feel of the product or solution, um, and the ability to pivot. Because as you know, we talk about the Facebooks of the world, right? But
Hmm.
we don't talk about the 30,000 other startups that fizzle
Didn't make
out
it. Yeah. Hmm.
within the first 18 months. We never talk about that. Even the other day, my son was watching this. What's that? I'm forgetting the movie on Facebook. What is it called? Social
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 something?
network.
network.
Social
Social
network.
Network. Yeah. So Ryan was watching Social Network. He goes like, "Baba, there's so much politics. What was going on there? Like like, why did these guys even start the company together if they're going to be so like against each other? And then they had to do a,
Hmm.
a lawsuit and settlement afterwards and all of this stuff." And I think what you saw Zuckerberg do there was he just said, "Look, I this is my way or the highway," and he kind of cleaned sheet. He cleaned the capital structure. So for me, again, I'm talking from a strategy perspective here. You're going to bring a CTO. This person should be. This is he is just as much as soul of the company as you as the founder is. Frankly,
Hmm.
if it's a tech driven story, if it's just a tech supported story, the stakes are much lesser. But then it's a question of, are you going to get the right quality? Do you really want to bring somebody into, who's advising 10 other startups? Because that's also part of the culture in Pakistan. You're going to get
Hmm.
somebody and be like, "Oh, I'll help you out. I'm working with several other startups." But then you're really a consultant, and there's a lot of young guys with very little experience, kind of, and you don't want to dilute your capital structure by giving shares away for people who are really not invested in you. So I hope that answers your question, because I'm again really coming from a high level perspective on this question.
Actually, it increases my questions, adds to some
Okay.
So
of my questions.
I have a
I
So
very
that,
add
different
something.
answer, Shuruk.
yeah,
Oh
so
yeah, go ahead.
that's actually where I'm coming to, because from my understanding, actually, you kind of need partners in the early stage who can guide you, and a CTO is generally not the best approach I've seen, because not only do they not perform if they have the shareholding, so I would agree that the aligning with the objectives and with the culture of the organization, that's the most important part. But at least in the Pakistani ecosystem, I've seen that most of the CTOs, they don't align with that.
I
So
agree.
my solution so far actually has been to engage with consultants, even if they're outsiders to the
Yeah,
company,
yeah, exactly.
but to actually partner up in a revenue share model. Actually, that's where I think Jonathan can personally help, and also through visibility as well. So I
Yeah.
would now actually give the floor to Jonathan to add his comments, and also to maybe introduce visibility and what uh, Jonathan and their team are doing in especially specifically in this space.
Mm.
Thanks
I will
very
add
much.
something,
But I
Shahid.
think
Sure.
Fawad wanted to say something.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
Fawad, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if we see the model of the UAE and Middle East
Mm,
specifically, so you will see, like they have the vision and they went with their technology. In last 15 years, like we have seen a very, very huge, like a curve of
in investment, yeah.
change. Okay, and then the people who were there, they have seen and they have witnessed that the people who started like start using the technology, it was not easy because there were people of all the different groups, young ones
Mm,
and the elderly, plus like the people in the middle aged people.
mhm,
So the country has the vision. They said that we will adopt the technology. So the people who were elderly were also forced to use the technology. Like you cannot run,
yeah.
you cannot escape.
Mm,
You were
that's
introduced with the technology and there was no solution. So
mm,
either you use or you don't use. They did not allow the people to go with like
a
two or
partial.
three or four options. Yes, so they have only state that we will going to adopt the technology and you have to come with the vision of the country. So
Mm,
in the same way, like the UAE was growing very, very fast, Saudi was following, and then the Qatar start following all these two countries. And
yeah.
we have seen they were doing all the things in like applications. So anything which you start with, they have to have the application first. So any
Mm,
small or any kind of business, it will not have a web page, but they will have the application. So like
mm,
they were having the vision.
ah,
So I don't know from who was advising them all of those things, even like in, because I am more into the medical field and technology. So the people, when they come to us, tell me, do you have the application? Can we do the appointment from your application? Can it sync with your
okay.
database? So like the people were going with the vision, and then when it was
Mm,
going to the ministry level, so we will have a different type of higher end meeting with all the people. So the government will ask, how will you access our database? Because if we will give the
mm,
medical record number to your hospital, it has to
how
be
are you going
ID. How will you going to fetch this ID?
to? Mm,
We will not going to give you this much, like because it is a national database. Like, so
yeah.
the people were understanding what they are going and what will be their vision. So
Mm,
like they were building the base on the technology, but they have the right mind frame as well. So your question, like the CTO will make any impact? Yes, the CTO. If like if we are discussing the culture of Pakistan, the problem is these CTOs are very, very old. Like they have done their masters maybe 20 years ago,
that's
and
true as
based
well.
on their experience, they have been appointed as the CTO, but they don't have the vision
Mm,
where the new world is heading. So there is a big lapse, between their understanding of the IT business and the
mm,
new era of the business. So this is a very big gap which need to be filled. So I personally suggest, if you are hiring a CTO, it has to be a not an aged guy, kind of a person who has been like in IT from COBOL, or very, very like the basic C++ kind of a programmer, because he will be telling you all these stories. I have been doing this, and he will not going to touch the baseline of the application. What is the impact of the business? What is the e-marketing? How you need to process all your marketing, development and all these things. So that need to be addressed, number one. And then the second thing I suggest that like when you have a technology driven business, so the lead has to be given to the IT, because
mm.
they will going to run the business. You need to follow their instructions, and like for that, the person who is the owner, he has to sync and he understand and he should have a trust on the technology.
So basically, you're saying that the rate of adoption really matters, and in case of the Middle East, it was very high. So that was a kind of a success factor for them. And then the second point that you've made is that you shouldn't have a very old CTO. Although I would say that experience does come in handy, but I take your point that in Pakistan, most of the we call it gray hair. They're just too
I'm
short hair.
feeling triggered, Shahrukh. I'm feeling very triggered
No,
right
no,
now.
no, you don't have. Do you have gray hair? Oh,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
you
of
do,
course
but
I have gray hair.
you do. But I meant more, even
More
even
gray
older
hair. Okay.
people. Yeah,
I,
more gray.
I'm ready for a hackathon with anyone on the call. Let's put it that way,
There
guys.
you go. There you go.
Yeah, but that's where I was coming to. That perhaps the challenge that the which actually makes your observation valid is that that's the Pakistani culture, and I would say that's not the same everywhere. And we have a
Yeah.
prime example in the form of Jonathan. He has gray hair. He has lost his hair, but still he has a lot of more. You can say more advanced experience, as well as like he mentioned a WAP, which is very traditional technology for me. But still. So that's why my point is that perhaps you're right for from the Pakistani culture standpoint, but I've seen people that are very old in the sense that they have been in the industry for a long while, but still way ahead of the young people. Even people who are just graduating, they know less of the new technologies than some of these expert people know. And we have other examples as well that even Saud and I are working with. For example, Terrasol that we recently got
Mm,
into partnership with. So now
yeah.
they're making airplanes for the Air Force. They're making things for the army and so on. So and all of these technologies are very high end. They're not like traditional
Right.
things that just don't break, but they are also very advanced and very custom made. And actually, one part of this was that this you can say experiences available to us in the form of Jonathan and his team. So
Mhm.
actually now I want to
Sure.
give the floor to Jonathan to briefly explain what they
Thanks
are
very much.
doing, just to explain everything.
Yeah, thanks very much. And maybe it's a valid concern, but just for let, let me rather than jump in and answer the question, there's things that I need to consider when I'm looking at startups. So what is driving the actual change? Is it sort of a regulation that's changing and there's a new need? Is there a new technology on the landscape and there's a new
Mm,
need? What is the actual new customer's need for information, usually, because we're talking in the technical world. So what's driving the initial request? Or is it human need? If we take Saud's, it's a human need to connect. So what are
mm,
the drivers are kind of the first thing. So the customer's drivers are what I look at. Now, when we talk about entrepreneurs, I kind of class them in a big way in three different ways. You have a first time entrepreneur, an individual, maybe him, a friend of his, a wife, a couple of friends, but they haven't really done this before. So they're going to take on a very different approach than a serial entrepreneur who's already done this successfully and even had exits and then redone it, etc. So he's going to come and adopt new things very quickly and have that process mind or whatever. And then you're going to
mm,
have the third group, which is kind of a large organization, which can be, a big company like an IBM or something like that,
mm.
or a government,
Very different, yeah.
etc. And they'll come with capital. So for me, when we say a startup, I come across three types of startups, and it really depends on, and there are three broad categories, just to give it as an example. So when
Mm,
they're approaching either the 0 to 1 or the 1 to 100 or the 100 or 50,000 and above type organizations, they're going to approach that differently. And there was a question earlier, and because I've been involved, and sometimes VCs will call me in at a certain stage of an organization's life to help them choose the next new line of the board of management or the technology people, is because the person who has the initial idea is not necessarily even the person who's big enough or will be able to grow enough to have the capacity to bring it to a dream. Now, the idea might come to a dream. Now, there are some people, we'll take the Mark Zuckerbergs, because I just mentioned the social network thing. He
mm,
was able to grow with that company and build his own personal capacity to be able to manage that. But that's like a unicorn in itself, because what
yeah.
normally happens, you need different type of people in a startup where you have to do a mock-up, great presentations, bring either customers on board or capital on board to push the idea, along with like really finding out is there a market fit for that service or product. So like stage one is really that 0 to 1 is finding the market fit, or the market fit finding you somehow. And they can be just creative people. Now when you want to scale, and this is where I think we started to talk about, you need different type of people, whether they are people who understand processes, people who understand technology. So you actually need to bring on a different level of capability. Now, some of those initial people may be able to grow and some won't. That doesn't mean they have to leave the company, but they won't have that capability or that previous experience or the capability to grow. It doesn't matter, because I think, and I've seen it, some people are hungry enough to grow fast enough. So don't underestimate someone because of their lack of experience, because they can compensate that with hunger. And what I have found then is when you get to 1 to 200, I've been brought in a couple of these occasions by VCs, because people who said this is a valuable company, but it needs to scale now. They've done a great job of bringing it to 100, 200 people, but that's not the same type of detail that's required, process that's required, understanding of markets, complexities, geographies, legal operations, all these cross-functional things that have one word in a legal regulation or directive can change the entire data landscape of a complete company. And so people to bring it to that level and implement all of the strategies are different. So, and then they can even bring it to 1,000 or 2,000 people. But then I work with, you can look at me on LinkedIn, I work with 50,000 plus companies where the level of detail and process, like the most important thing for most companies is how do we onboard people? How do we move them from one role to another? Because they might even spend 20 years with us. How do we offboard them? And how do we even rejoin them? Some of them come back to the same company. You'd be shocked at how much just that one end-to-end process plays a role in the ability of a company to continue its operations and even grow simultaneously. It needs that flow of in and out within the company, because the company, as it gets big enough, almost becomes like a living entity upon itself. So it's, I'd really have to. And then another factor. So I'll just say the 4 factors. One was what's driving it. The first one is what type of entrepreneur is driving it. 2, at what stage in development is it at? And then 3, is it a technology driven or a non-technology driven company? So I kind of need to understand, when I'm working with a company, the details of each of those 4 factors before I make any initial decision around what's important. Because just jumping in and saying, oh, it should be like that, it should be not like that. I think Fawad made a funny one. Like, I'm working on a project right now with Amazon recognition for AI video streaming and image recognition live, so that humans don't have to process that stuff anymore. And it's kind of like Amazon have a new service called Recognition, Rekognition. Instead of C, it's K. But like all of these technologies can like eliminate a lot of sort of manual work, unnecessary touching, which means unnecessary errors, etc., etc. So the bigger you get, the more efficient you have to be. Now, what is important at each of those stages, we'd nearly need to make a matrix of those 4 factors. And then really, what's the goal? So there are very few companies, like there's a saying that I just love is, and when I meet an entrepreneur who believes this, is make my challenge so big enough that without the help of a great team and God, I will not succeed. They're the dreamers that I love to be in contact with. Now, not everybody is that. People are just there practically. They want to make a living. They want to, earn whatever it is. They want to build a company, maybe even have it a legacy within their family or whatever else it is. So it also depends on that entrepreneur, what attitude. Are they cathedral or mosque builders? Or are they, I just want to provide for, or do I really want to be abundant and prosperous? You know what I mean? So the attitude of the person determines that. And when you work with different people from those different strata, uh, you're going to deliver a different service for them, Shaluk. Now I know that sounded a very abstract answer, but I can drill down. But the drilling down doesn't happen until those questions are kind of answered, and we kind of have a ballpark of where the person who's coming with the request is coming from. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think it kind of covers everything we've spoken about since the start, and maybe a few more points. So we have a question from a viewer that so she's asking that if we're implying that primarily the vision is aided by technology, and this assistance is what drives scalability. So just from my end, I would say that it is true for technology driven companies like Jonathan said, but not every company has to be technology driven, and maybe some parts of it doesn't have to be technology driven. So I would give an example of Flyware, which is relevant to yourself, just because I know who this viewer is. So it's not primarily a technology driven business, but for this business to scale, technology is a necessity. So scaling it without technology is possible, but then it's a huge capital investment, and also maybe an HR investment. But that's not
Hmm.
really something that is available to Liveware. And the shortcut is through technology. And the shortcut to technology is are people like Jonathan and people like who are actually able to assist with these types of things at a larger scale, and not just from a which application to install. It's more at a strategic and the process level that Jonathan has been emphasizing for so much in this talk so far. So Jonathan, if you would,
Sure.
and South, if you would
Mhm.
also like
Yeah.
to comment on this.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, look, I think um, clearly if you have a vision, it's always vision first. There's nothing, that should impede that or interfere with that. But I think once you have the vision, then you have to look at how you can have leverage through technology. And because, look, we're talking about scale here, right? And scale is scary. Scale is scary. It's going to cost you. It's going to disrupt you. It's going to potentially, when you have more touch points, they have more failure points.
Mm,
You can have more cost of a a shutdown. Like I remember, I used to work when I was in the U.S. I was working with a client, Verizon. This is one of the largest service providers in the U.S. And they used to say they've got their networks have a downtime. What was it? 99.999 or something like that. That was their uptime. Sorry. So I was like, hey, that's not bad. He's like, no, 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 you don't understand. This 0.0001 where
yeah,
we
Is
it's too
where we
much.
lose
ridiculous.
this
Yeah.
thing,
Too much.
Mm,
it costs us like $5 million or something like that every year. I was like, really? It's like that's quite a bit of hit, and it's like, well, that's the downside of scaling. But on the other side, I think if you are subscale, that's also scary, and it
mm,
has to be then, regardless of your vision, you have to think big. Like again, I'm not going to name this platform because I'm working very closely with them right now, um, and they are kind of, you know, let's just say shy about sharing this kind of information online, but they are struggling, or let's say they're growth hungry, but their vision is, or currently the current vision doesn't allow them to grow, because the current
mm,
vision says whatever you've done in the last 3 decades, do a little bit more of that. And in the board meeting that we had, I sat there and I just referred them to this book, 10x is better than 2x, or 10x is easier than 2x. I think that's the name of the book by, I think, uh,
Benjamin
what is
Hardy.
it? Benjamin Hardy and Darren something. I forget. Um, so I told him, I said, look, it's 10x is doing easier. It's easier than 2x, because when you think big, and like Jonathan was saying, you need a great team and God to help you get through it. Then your vision and your resourcefulness, not your resources, but your resourcefulness increases, because then you're saying, no, 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 I want to play at this level. I want to have this impact. Then I need to talk to, let's say a blue chip company or the government or whatever, right? I mean, then you're no longer playing small ball. And I think to step back and realize where the sweet spot is of scaling, that's scary, and not scaling, which is also scary. And then realizing how much of your vision is going to be affected by that. So the short answer to this question is vision first every time. But then when you bring technology in, technology is leverage. Leverage is ability to scale fast and exponentially. But then be ready, because some people are going to resist. Some people are going to make such mistakes that it could cost you big time. So you've got to like sort of have a risk mitigation plan as well, when you're thinking about bringing technology in, and having a bit of a utopian view of scale, because it may not turn out the way you think. So I just want to make sure that this conversation is very balanced in terms of also the risks of scaling and not scaling as well.
I'll just add one more point, South, that
Yep.
like sometime we have seen that the R&D department also make a big impact, and it is also very important. If you're working on some sort of higher end technology platform or something, if they have an R&D department and they have the vision and they drive the like the strategies and all the business, so it has to, as you said, and I was also mentioning that the vision makes a very big like an important role in all these kind of businesses. So I will give you example, like the Kodak system, which was like earlier, because they have a very very advanced kind of the R&D department. So they were looking, even the GE, the Philips, and like the
Mm-hmm.
Siemens, they never gone to that level because they were like thinking 10 to 15 years ahead.
Yeah.
So they went from a thick client to thin client, and after that they went directly to the Explorer, like the viewers and all these kind of things. So the people, when they adopted, it was already too late because Kodak already gone ahead of that, and like without footprints and all in the Explorer. So like the people were start imagining, and then they introduced the AI, and which was introduced later by the other like the big companies. So the vision, as you mentioned, and the R&D department makes a very big impact on the business.
I agree. Can I just add one more thing before I think Jonathan, we go to Jonathan, just to kind
Yes.
of
Sure.
jump on this. So I was working with a company in California, and they had a product which was very much tied to the communication networking space, hardware. All hardware companies like Cisco and Juniper and Redback, and just basic. You're looking at pizza boxes like switches and routers, things like that. So, um, so when I went there, their addressable market, right? So let's just say, which we all do, right? We all kind of do the TAM, SAM, SOM
Mm.
uh, market sizing, right? So
Yep.
their TAM, or total addressable market, based on what they were targeting, was around, like, I don't know, they kind of estimated it at around like $5 billion or something like that. And they were a non-player basically. They had less than $1 million in revenue. So they're like, look, if we really grow into this market, we can all retire. We can grow old into this market. It's big enough. Now the R&D portion of their group, let's say, stumbled upon an idea. And when I was there, we were doing a strategic planning exercise for 3 days. In the strategic planning exercise, and it's an open floor, right? It's a very democratic, not it was a very flat structure. So the one of their tech guys goes like, look, we have such and such solution, but it's not a hardware solution, it's a software solution, because part of their R&D got them to, or data got them to look at a problem in a different way. And you know what the problem was? The problem was, when we look at our iPhones, for instance, and we look at all the certifications at the back of the iPhone, you see all these markers. You've got to have it
Yeah.
certified at heat level, radio frequency. Um, you know, uh, you know. So there's all these testing is done that allows you to sell that phone in a market. So if you are not certified, if you have not been tested by those labs, you cannot sell into a market. Um, so they're like, yeah. So it was like, what's the big deal? They said, well, who keeps track of all this? Because if you're looking at a cockpit, a plane, an airplane, you've got 20,000 units in there, which need to be tested or certified every 4 or 5 years. Who's going to do this? And they went on looking into this, and they're like, hold on a second. There's hardly anybody doing this, and a lot of this is done in Excel. Like they've got these people sitting there looking for what the expiry dates are for these certifications,
For these
and then
components, yeah.
submitting to labs. They're like, this is insanity. This is absolute craziness.
So much manual work, yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much error, right? And so many Excel
Mm.
sheets, and they've got 2, 3 people at Cisco. They were working on this stuff. So we all kind of like our jaws dropped. We're like, hold on a second, this can't be right. I mean, we're sitting in the heart of tech in the world, and
Yeah. And no one's doing
Cisco,
this, yeah.
yeah, and Cisco was literally like 2 miles away. We were like literally 2 miles away from Cisco, and I'm like, this can't be right. And they're like, no, this is true. There is a serious issue. So I said, and I just asked them. I said, okay, what if somebody makes an error? What if somebody makes an error, and they don't have that certification as part of the landing? The landing bill that you get
Mm.
for customs, when let's say anything you import lands at the customs and they have the landing bill there. And if you don't have those certifications approved or certifications are current, customs does not release that product. So then this guy
Mm.
goes and says, by the way, this such and such public company, they went into Colombia in South America, and they were not certified. So they were tens of millions of dollars worth of equipment was sent back to the U.S.
Mm.
And there was like, wow, we never thought this was going to be such a huge problem. So within that weekend, that very weekend, they created a team that would come up with an MVP for that software. And I'm not kidding you. Within 2 weeks, I got a call from the CEO again. He goes like, you need to come back to California. We need to talk. And I said, what happened? And basically his point was, we need to spin this thing off. We need to create another company. This is too
Just
too
for this
big.
solution. Mm.
Yeah, and then we need to, and this is so much bigger, and we need to scale so much, and the addressable market of that was like, at least 20 times that of their hardware solutions that they were providing. So bottom line is that sometimes R&D is going to stumble upon something. Sometimes they're going to resist even. But when they find this, it comes back to your management to say, look, I've spotted an opportunity, and I'm not used to this kind of scale. It's kind of scary. We're just looking at an opportunity so much bigger. What do we do with the current situation, and how do we manage that opportunity as well? So, look, I think again, it's a very, very tricky thing when we say we're going to scale. If it was that easy, everybody would be doing it.
True.
But
True.
in their case, last point I would make was they were gutsy enough to spin it off, and putting aside my other differences that we had, but all in all, I got to give them credit that these guys took a shot at this idea, and I think they've done well. I'm not sure if they've really scaled to the point that they thought they would, because again, one thing that Fawad said, and I'm not going to be an ageist here, and this is the last point I'm going to make, and we're going to go to Jonathan. But the problem was, I'm sorry to say this, and I'm no offense to anybody. I'm in my late 40s as well. But the problem was when you have 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds going and raising funding, where the VCs are looking for 19 and 20-year-olds, it's very hard to win that argument, because what the investors, the VCs were looking for was like, look, this is, we need speed. We don't need too many SOPs and too much structure. We need ridiculous amount of Red Bull and sleepless nights. And we need a culture that is not very structured, and it's very much about time to market and speed to market. And we will fix it on the fly, which is kind of what Reid Hoffman talks about in his book Blitzscaling. And I think they would have struggled with that, because that's kind of the expectation is older people don't move fast. That's the stereotype. And older people cannot scale fast, which is not true, because as we all know, whether it was Yahoo or whether it was Google, they had to bring in an older person to scale. So it's not like one size fits all. but scale is still an art. It's not a science yet.
Okay, thanks, Saud.
Yeah.
I'll take that
Sure.
one then. I just look at the original question. We're implying that the vision aided by technology drives scalability. I need to step back a little bit and talk about business. Business has two sides. It has demand and it has supply. Supply is a function, or scalability is a function on the supply side.
Mm.
It's only an answer to the question that the demand side asks. So if the demand is in the market, and the best way to say it is the best scenario is a hungry crowd. You know, if you could have the worst, whatever, falafels in the world, but if you're standing outside of a sports stadium that's on halftime, you'll sell every one of them, right? It doesn't
Mm.
matter. Or where there are hungry people. So demand is the driver of scalability. Now, you might have a person with a vision who's capable, but they need either to initiate, incite demand, or be addressing a demand that's coming in their direction. So if I look at the question is what drives scalability? Demand drives scalability. Vision and process and all of those things are just answers to that question. It's about the capability of the entrepreneur, etc. So when I deal with, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about what we do now, is um, capital events are a really important thing. So what that means is if I want to sell a company because I want it to scale and then I want to sell it, or someone wants to buy it because they see it's valuable, or I actually want to grow the company, somehow I need capital, and that comes in two forms: more customers buy, or I get investment from somewhere. And to prepare for those sort of events, you actually need to make your company very valuable. And that's why I talk a lot about processes, because of the 20 odd things when an investor does due diligence, having ownership of your own critical and core processes and enabling them with your own software gives you IP internally, which gives you extra assets, which increases the value of your company. So for those who value companies, there's discounted cash flow methods, probably the most standard, and EBITDA, which is kind of earnings before whatever. The multiples of EBITDA is fairly standard as a guesstimate for what the valuation of your company is. But if you don't rent software, or you have your own IP address, you're going to be valued more in order to be able to get the capital on the investment side, or even to be looked at as a potential sale to attract that capital, or even attract really big customers. Because when you go to big governments, if more than one of your sources of revenue makes up 33% of your revenue, you're considered a risk. Big companies, they look at the revenue flows within your company and say, well, how much of a risk? They won't even work with you. So your scalability depends on the diversity of clients that you have, the diversity of revenue streams that you have, the diversity of investment funds that you have. So there's a scalability. Like, I love the question. It's a starting point, but scalability has many factors in terms of it's demand that drives it, and then it's the capability to manage the resourcefulness. I like the word that Saud used. It's not resources, because if you're resourceful, you'll align with the resources, whether they're the people to build it, the customers to buy it, the investors to invest in it, in order to make that scalability possible. And processes and technology are just one of it. It's actually the entrepreneur's capability to manage all of those resources and be resourceful to acquire new resources in order to make that scaling happen. Now, I know I packed a lot in there very quickly, but scaling is not, here's one answer: technology will help you scale. It's about bringing people together. It's about bringing capital together. It's about bringing technology together. It's about timing the types of things you do well, because markets, customers, investors all have timing. So there's a there's a how would you say a capability set that an entrepreneur needs to know within their particular industry, within the geographies that they're working, to be really in touch and have their finger on the pulse of what's happening next and what might happen. So scalability, I think we could take each one of the things I said and we could do a deep dive on them. Scalability
That's
is actually a huge topic, you know what I mean?
true.
Hmm.
So I would
Great.
actually now ask Sania, because she's the one who asked the question, if you think your question has been answered, and if not, feel free to give a rebuttal to Jonathan, and so then Fawad there.
Hello, all. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes, but the voice is a bit low.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, yeah, now it's
Yeah,
better.
yeah, much better.
Yeah, no, no. I would say yes. It gave me a lot to think about. I really liked Jonathan's take on this because I agree that demand fuels the scalability. Because if there is no demand, your product. It's pretty much the story of what happened to Nikola Tesla. He did everything he could. The technology was on point. He did not have the finance, and he could not generate the demand that he wanted at that time. So his idea did not get the scalability or the fruition that he desired. So I agree with what Jonathan had to say in that regard. Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, I would also say
No,
that
thank
part
you.
of part of creating that demand or meeting that demand, let's say you're not even creating it, but meeting it, is your ability to market. And I think it's such an under appreciated skill, marketing and sales both,
Mhm.
where I think Edison beat Tesla, is that regardless of who really had the incumbency on the IP, and end of the day, we associate the breakthroughs mostly with Edison, right? The bulb
Yeah,
and the 1,000 bulbs before, or the 10,000 ones or whatever. But I think it comes down to making your narrative clear to the market on why you, building that trust to really tap into that demand, because the demand could also be latent, right? It could be hidden, and sometimes people don't know what they want because
Mhm.
they just don't know what they want, right? And the moment you show them that, and you give them a very easy path to to um, to tap into it, then it's a different ballgame. That's why you see so many unicorns pop up out of California, is because they said, look, there is a demand for a disruption in the automotive industry. And I was sort of hovering around in California at that time when Uber was getting his Series A, Series B, and people used to say, it's like, who in the hell would put their
Yeah.
daughter with a
Mm.
with a stranger? Like, who would pay to have your stranger? It's like, well, people do this in taxi cabs. It's like, yeah, but taxi cabs are regulated. Now you got an unregulated, some Joe Schmo driving around and he's taking your family around. It's like, no way, that's not going to happen. But when they realized it was not about cars, it was about convenience and cleanliness and people taking pride in their cars and really utilizing an underutilized asset in their cars that are sitting around catching rust, and it can tap into a demand. um, it just then came up the Airbnb idea, similar concept. It is a utilization play. So people didn't know that, but once they knew it, you have a bunch of unicorns being born out of that demand. And it's been a mad rush. Like, you look at even um, you know Uber has made so many billionaires. Forget million. These people weren't even millionaires, first time millionaires. So you look at these kind of opportunities. When they hit, there's no looking back. And I still think that it could be very interesting. Maybe, I don't know if you want to discuss those kind of things here, but what there could be some sectors here who are ripe for hyperscaling over the next 10 years.
Mm.
And we can have a discussion around what could that look like and what kind of demand that could be, which could be latent as well.
Yeah. Okay. But I was just thinking, this means could we replace the word demand with problem solving for that matter? And that a visionary can probably identify the problems that are otherwise invisible to the eyes of a common person.
That's 100% what demand is.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Demand is
Interesting.
What?
basically I have a problem. I need somebody to solve it, whether it is the cost side, convenience side, quality side, whatever. Like there is some problem, big or small. You solve it for me, and you do it in a way that makes it no brainer. There's some concepts around 4 delta, 5 delta, which is like how much advantage you have over the incumbent options. You give me something which is, let's say, 80% cheaper than the existing option, or 3 times better on the quality, or whatever. You've solved my problem. So
Mm.
all of a sudden, I'm yours.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah.
nothing else that comes my way. All the demand is coming your way now, and you better be
Mm.
ready because you need to scale.
Yeah.
Mm.
I,
Yeah.
I would add here, demand is, I like the way you brought it out, is demand, if you want to get to creating enough demand, is a long-term job. Now, it can happen in short if you do push it up, but there's a triangle. I don't know if many of you see it. Is like 3% are ready to buy right now. 7% intend
Right.
to change. I forget what it is exactly. It's something like 30% have a need but they're not ready. 30% don't have a need, and then 30% are not interested or not aware. But if you look at that entire group, if you when people are marketing, which is really the how would you say, that's what's bringing people to be in that demand, readiness, we could call it. Half of the
Mm.
job is education, or I would
Yeah.
say even 70% is, if people aren't aware, like even by us having this conversation, Sharuk, it means there are
Mm.
certain new ideas or ideas that we're sharing with each other or sharing with people who are watching, that they got information of something they didn't know before. So they
Mm.
might have come from awareness, oh no, lack of awareness to awareness, or a bit more detail about what it is. And that means, I remember, or to most degree, you feel a sense of goodwill towards the people who share ideas with you that are valuable for you. And what building demand is often is the sharing of those valuable ideas.
Mm.
And in the end, that's probably who they will come to. Since you set this up,
Mm.
you're the center of this trust network. They'll remember, oh, okay, well, I got that idea from one of Sharuk's podcasts. So that will, I used to, in different countries, set up meetings where people came together in a couple of hundred, where there'd be venture capitalists, people looking for work, entrepreneurs, etc. And just because I was the person who set up those meetings, people would involve me in things I wasn't even an
Mm.
expert on. I got non-direct benefits from actually just building that trust network. And I think the best form of marketing, or at least one of my personal preference, is you give value to people, you share what you know, because you've spent years building experience of understanding, whether it's how to scale or whatever other topics we're talking about. You build up a trust and a want to actually to go back to that source. It's quite often not about price. Price is when people are in a situation and in a panic and they don't have resources. But people who build up longer term relationships are more likely to get those hockey stick curves. They don't know when it's going to happen, but it could be 5, 7 years down the line, where you're continuously adding value to the market, the applicable market. So,
Mm.
most overnight people, as we know, are not really overnight. They've probably invested 10 years into the market, in goodwill, in personal relationships, in giving information, in order to
Mm.
help create that demand in different ways. Now, we can do it adding technology, advertisements, etc., and we can speed up the process. But in essence, that giving of value is what creates the demand, I think.
Uh,
Mm.
Mm.
I will add a small point here. like sometimes the right decision also make a very big impact. If you remember, the Kodak used to have the best camera, but they did not
Mm-hmm.
choose the right technology on that time, and they did
Mm,
not go for the digital camera. Same thing apply for the Nokia when they
Mm-hmm.
were
mm,
running in the business, and they did not go for the touch screen, and the later on all the other different companies which were not even known to us have already taken the market share and all those things, which the people have the established market, they have the all kind of technology, they have the share, they have the fan following, whatever you can call, they have it. But small and wrong decisions, maybe I don't know who was involved, like the CEOs or whatever,
mm.
but it has impacted their business and they are like out of the business now.
I guess that comes
Mm.
back to the vision part of the
Vision, but
equation.
I was about to say the same. Yes, I was about to say the same.
Mm,
So it appears as such. Yes.
See, it's also important to know that, whatever you think, uh, today, it's gonna times are gonna be very different. That's why when you look in the S&P 500, for instance, it is basically, I think, spitting out one company every, I don't know if it's like every 20 weeks or half a year or whatever. It's because even the biggest of the biggest who've made it or public, and the top 500 biggest companies out there, they are no longer in the top 500 because they're not no longer adapting their vision to the market
Mm.
conditions. So a
mm,
Mm.
vision that does not respect the market, frankly, is not a vision. It's a pipe
Yeah.
dream,
mm,
because market is essentially the net of all the opinions and transactions that are going to exist between us humans. And if you say no, I'm going to hold my vision. Now, part of it is, in the investment world, we call it alpha. Alpha is what you generate above and beyond the market. So market is going to make a certain amount of money, but because you have something which is so different, so controversial, that in the end you are proven right and the market is wrong, and the market has to then come up to your level. That's why you buy something at $1 a share, and the market is like, no, no, it's not worth $1, and then market realizes it's worth $100. So now you've made $99, right? Because $99 of alpha. Well, those are very far and few in between. So most people are going to get humbled by the market. So their vision is going to be tested rapidly. It's going to be tested with AI. I can tell you flat out that, a kid who is good at graphic design and give him Canva, for $12.99 a month, um, and if I need some social media marketing done, I've got all my needs covered for less than 40,000 rupees a month. I'm good to go. That's it.
Mm.
That's $100 or like $150 a month. Now, it like literally 7, 8 years ago, you would have said that, that requires 3, 4 man team, that requires a full-fledged, a computer setup, blah blah blah, all of that, right? So the market has changed and we have to respect. And if that means that people with less experience and more skill in the market are available, then you put them over people with more experience, frankly, and or you repurpose your whole team. So goes back to adjusting your vision to the market is what I'm saying.
Mm. Adaptability.
Yeah.
yep.
But then, yeah, yeah, makes sense.
So I guess the crux of the discussion is that to go from 0 to 1, the vision is the priority. Then from 1 to 100, it's purely demand based. If you don't have the demand, you can't go to the 1 to 100. Like in the case of Hopistan, you started with the one, which came
Yeah.
purely from the vision and the relations, and then
Yeah.
from 1 to 100 was through the vision, but also enabled through technology. And then perhaps
Correct.
going from 100 onwards is uh, the real scalability part. That's when you have to figure out uh, whether you're actually able to reach that scale. And like South said in the beginning, that's the scary part. And like we discussed before, it's this the fear of success. If you're actually able to scale, the responsibility and the fame and all of the and not even just responsibility of your customers, the responsibility of your employees, of managing such large business, of
Yeah.
actually
Hmm.
impacting your
Hmm.
local environment in a positive way. All of those kick
Hmm.
in, and you have to be ready for it. And I guess that's where many of the new businesses are also going towards, with the standards for sustainability, with this ESG reporting and everything. So perhaps this is also to ease the mind of the new, you can say, boards as well, that they are making a positive impact. It's not just that they're making money out of it, but they're net positive to the economy, to the environment, to the people that they are actually selling to and that they are working with. um
Agreed.
Hmm.
Agreed. Shahrukh,
yeah,
Shahrukh,
yeah,
just sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to say
sure, sure.
it would be very important if you could just spend just a couple of minutes on the product side of this discussion,
Sure, sure.
because when you say you go from, let's say, 0 to 100, I think this is a time where you need to go back to what, like, this famous saying that you don't need 1,000 people who like your product. You need 100 who love your product.
Hmm.
So if you can evolve and pivot and refine your product with those first 100 customers, and those hundreds, 100 don't mean customers, 100 means those 100 who absolutely swear by your product
Hmm.
or your service. Like they just can't do without you, right? That kind of, if you can get that 5-star rating of whatever you do through those iterations and making sure your product is scale ready, market ready, right? Because there's so many different levels of scaling. When we do investment readiness training, we provide, like, there's like 9 different levels of scalability and 9 different
Hmm.
levels of funding and different levels of how you can, and we can probably do a full workshop on that if you like. I think that would be helpful to your audience too.
Yeah,
But
sure.
getting your product uh, lovable is important,
Hmm.
because if you don't make it lovable, you're not going to make it scalable.
I
That's
guess
at
that
least with
that
my view.
But
that was also
sorry,
the
just
differentiating factor between Apple and all of the other companies.
There you go. There you
They were just more more, maybe not lovable, but
go.
or maybe the products
but
were
you but you
lovable.
know but you
Maybe
but you
maybe
know
the
yeah,
company
maybe
was
not
not
the
so lovable.
company. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but
the
their
company is
products were
probably
more
not very
lovable.
lovable. Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's true. That's true. I guess Sania wanted to say something, but then she disconnected
I
for.
think did she drop off?
Yeah, we can wait for her to come back.
Yeah, raving fans, exactly. That's exactly right what Jonathan said.
Yeah.
That if you have those people who just swear by your product,
Mm,
they're gonna market for you, and they're gonna be your biggest champions. And I think that, like, when I look at some of the businesses that I've been involved in, even in Pakistan, the biggest champions are the ones whose lives have meaningfully changed because of our product, whether it's in
mm,
fitness, whether it's in skills, capacity building, whatever it is. Because these are the two areas I'm involved in: wellness and skills. And when I see people's lives materially change, and I'm not, at the risk of exaggerating, they become family.
mm.
They're just
Yeah.
so connected to you that they feel like they have to spread the word. I think we can do like 2, 3 follow-ups to this particular podcast, Shahrukh. I think there's just
Yeah, I
so
think
much
so.
more we
Yeah,
can cover.
that's true. That's true. So I guess for now we can wrap up. Maybe we'll take
Yeah.
some closing remarks from all of them in alphabetical order. So starting from Fawad.
I think as we have all like discussed, so I will go with the vision part. I think the vision is the key for, and definitely the technology is impacting, and it is the now the key factor, in the latest world. So this is
Mm.
from my side. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Jonathan.
I'm going to give an analogy of scaling because scaling was kind of the topic. I decided to do the first diet in my life last year, starting in July, which meant limiting the number of calories. And
Mm.
that, if I wanted something to go well, I had to limit the number. So whatever it was, 2,100 calories a day. And I remember 2 weeks in, I had taken food onto my plate, but it was too heavy. And I had to put a spoon back into the pan of some
Ah.
of the food I put on my plate.
Mm.
So I required a discipline in order to actually do something I didn't want to do, which is put food back in the
Hmm.
pan from my plate because I
Yeah,
love
that's
food.
quite
Uh,
unusual.
yeah, yeah. And but then that allowed me to lose 8, 9 kilos, no problem. And
Hmm.
scaling is kind of similar. Scaling is often about saying no to things you used to do because you have to focus, you have to go forward. And not everybody, there's loads of people who'd like to be 10 kilos slimmer, but they're not prepared to put that spoon of
Hmm.
food back into the frying
I know.
pan. And really,
That's,
scaling a business is very, very similar. It's not. There are things
hmm.
we would like to do. A lot of people want their company to be like their family. It's not. It's a
Hmm.
business, so that requires certain processes to work very well. So if you're prepared to take the short term pain for that long term hit of making your business do really well, which requires discipline, you can be successful. That would be my
Hmm.
last statement, sure.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. So, Sanya, anything from you?
Yeah, well, I actually didn't add a lot, but my closing remark would be what I make of it is that scalability to me is a tangible outcome of a holistic approach. So it includes the vision, it includes the execution, it includes the relatability, and finally the timing of your product.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So there are more than one factor in play. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Also true. Yeah. Hmm. Okay. So, anything from you?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything everybody else has already shared. I would just say that when you think of scalability, I think you think of um, this approach of be uh, strict with your vision and flexible with your approach, because scalability would require you to be nimble at times.
Hmm.
What you may think is scalable may not happen in this phase. It may happen in the next phase, and you should be willing to de-ego yourself as you look to scale your business. So I think having a flexible approach to scalability, listening to market forces, factors, listening to the customers, listening to your CFO when he talks about the costs that could take your business out before you scale, um, or underestimating the cost of growth, underestimating investment in your people, because you're not going to scale a business if your human capital is not scaling, right? So if
Mm.
you need to build your people ahead of building your business,
Hmm.
because end of the day it's going to come down to people. And
I hope
so
Shahrukh
having
is
that
taking
approach.
notes. I hope Shahrukh is taking notes. Shahrukh.
Um. So I have a slightly different opinion. My
Sure.
opinion is that it's not the people; it's actually the systems, and the
Yeah.
people are
Mm.
just
Sure.
the cog in the machine. And
Shahrukh,
you know,
are you
some,
the AI Elon Musk has been
No,
warning us about?
but
I have a
but
you
feeling.
never know.
okay, but
You never know.
just a question, Shahrukh. Just a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is that not the same as executing your vision? Is building the system not the same as
Yeah.
executing your vision? Like, what's the difference?
So I would say the executing the vision is kind of building the system, but then
Yeah.
the vision is different if it is system based versus if, let's say, it's very capital intensive, or it's versus people based. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So in
Hmm.
many companies, I've seen that people, even in my specific field, they have huge teams that go
Mm-hmm.
in. They spend maybe 2 3 months to do an audit, to do the taxes, and so on.
Yeah.
And when they come back, they have huge piles of, you could say, working papers, but they're not of the same quality, and they show this, just the facts and not the insights. But if you
Yeah.
if you do make if you make a system which is just one questionnaire. So, for example, we made a questionnaire for the Red Cross, which is 600 questions.
Hmm.
You need just one person to go for 1 week, fill out these 600 questions, and you have kind of like
Yeah.
a diagnostic of the whole organization. So now
Hmm.
this approach, this vision, or whichever you can call it, I call it technology or a tool. it's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not based on the people or their resources or their skill levels. It's based on what we have developed in house as, you can say, I have no other word for it than a technology, because regardless of, if even if we're using a paper to fill out the question, the thought behind the questionnaire and how the results are calculated, that is sort of an in-house technology, that you can just
Right.
deploy in any area. And we've deployed it in about 21 countries now. So we have, we know we tested it the first time in 2018. In 2019 we went to 3 or 4 countries, then again in 2020, even during COVID, we went to a few countries to deploy that. And then we've
Mm.
been doing that since, and we're going to Mali this year to do the same thing. So it's been growing from there, and it's only just 1% that you need. But of course, for me it's two people, so the two of us go, and then we implement this technology that we built. um, but another approach could have been a people based, it could have been a software based thing that which is primarily focused on automated data collection from the
Mm.
client. So I would say that it doesn't necessarily have to be a single source vision. You can have
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
vision implemented differently in different situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and that keeps every business exciting, because if it's the same, then then we won't have serial entrepreneurs. We'll have only the first time entrepreneurs, and they will get so bored that they wouldn't start the next business. It's the
Mm.
variation in each business and the implementation of everything within that business that keeps things exciting, at least for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shark, I would just request that we do some sort of follow up to this podcast, because
Yeah,
I
sure.
think we
Sure.
can
Yeah.
cover one of the derivatives or offshoots could be looking at the sectors that we
Hmm.
think are ripe for scaling, look at the
Yep.
disruptive technologies specifically, or apps, or what have you,
Mm.
Hmm.
and then
Mm.
also the impact on culture, and then the relationships between people, because scale, uh, kind of reshapes our perception of the world, frankly.
That's true. That's true.
It completely puts you in a different dynamic, and it goes beyond unit pricing or unit
Hmm.
models. It's more about impact, right? So let's say
Yep.
if I look at just Hopistan, for example, and I am thinking of Hopistan as something that I'm just doing it to impact a couple of people. That's one thing. And then next thing, if I'm adding 3 zeros to that or 4 zeros to that, I have a completely different set of
Hmm.
expectations of
That's
myself.
true.
And maybe I could lose my vision. I could risk losing my vision in that, because I
Hmm.
could just be
Mm.
like, I have to service this monster that I've created. And all of a sudden, I'm too far away from where I started.
That's
Right.
true.
So
Hmm.
these are some of the things that I would say. I mean, scale is such an amazing um, topic, and especially in a world which is getting smaller.
Hmm.
It's kind of ironic that we should be
We
actually,
have to
you
discuss
know,
this.
we have to
Yeah.
discuss the opposite of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a 2 hour podcast.
Yeah.
Yep. That's true.
Well,
That's true.
something you said there, Sad, which is interesting because you brought it up earlier in another way. If someone holds on to the vision but it doesn't fit the market, there's a problem.
Yeah.
If someone bends
Correct.
to the market but it doesn't suit themselves, they can break down or burn out.
Absolutely.
And then,
Hmm.
Absolutely.
and then there's this sort of third model where you have your vision, but you're prepared to pivot it with the market and manage your own life or how you delegate to the
Mm.
ambassadors. So there are, in my mind, a vision isn't just a vision. A really adaptable vision has three perspectives: that of
Yes.
the
Yeah.
founder, the market's perception of it, and then the management of the two of those, which is almost like a third
Hmm.
one, which is the only way it can actually really scale. So an
Mm.
adaptable vision has to think about it from those different perspectives, or otherwise the market won't fit or the founder will break
Hmm.
down unless that third relationship is in place. And it'll even change. The vision would have to adapt, like what you see as it
Yeah.
now. And I loved, there's a guy called Alex Hermosi. He said, as long as it's going in a directionally correct way, it mightn't be the way
Mm.
you exactly imagined it, but
Mm.
directionally it's
Hmm.
delivering the intention I had, and
Mm.
Hmm.
the consequences are the type of consequences I would have liked, but they mightn't be exactly what I first saw.
Well,
Hmm.
Jonathan, I would just say, like when you think about the concept of social enterprises, where people want to be of service to the community, but they don't know how to scale that service, right? So they want to, let's say, teach underprivileged children or children living in, um, slum areas, for instance, right? But they want this vision to scale. And they say, well, the total addressable market is in millions and millions of children. I can only access 500 in one school. What should I do? And I think it goes back to, again, how can we scale these visions? How can we connect? So me as a founder can be replicated into 10,000 founders, and they can,
Mm.
even though it's a brick and mortar vision, it's a brick and mortar model, how can we scale it through people rather than through just technology, right? So that's something else that we have to think about, because
Hmm.
people all around the world want to have an impact, but they also want to know that they're part of a, I don't know, they have the blueprint on how to do this, and and maybe they can come together and learn from each other, best practices, lessons learned, and say, okay, my vision, I cannot impact 2 million kids, but I can definitely impact 300, and it's because this is some near my home and I can do XYZ, right? Something tangible. So I think we can also scale the subscalable, right? Or the subscaled. But again, that's another whole different topic
Yeah,
that
but I
we
would
can
say
also
that
tap into.
I would say that the point you've made is also on the marketing side, and sometimes you don't have to necessarily market to your customers. You also have to market to your employees and the people
Yes.
that you want to
Yeah,
take
yeah,
the
yeah. Of
place.
course.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, so, so for example, the examples you gave, again, because I know the people that you're talking about. So,
Right.
so with her, the problem is that
Right.
she thinks that only she can run the business, which is partially
Right.
true. But then she's not able to inspire the people who can do the same as what she is doing and what she wants them to do. And I'm not so sure if it's the problem of the people themselves, or if there's a lack of marketing or a lack of culture being embedded into the systems.
Hmm.
You know what, Shahrukh, it is? And it
Yeah.
goes back to the capacity building part I was talking about. Um, so I'm going to give you another example. There's a, let's say, again, it's just going to, I'm always trying to watch, like, but I don't want to disclose names and
But we
people, but
know,
Yeah,
but
they
but but
nodded in.
but we understand. But we know each one
Yeah,
of those
that's okay.
actually.
Yeah.
okay,
So
but
it's
so
really.
the example is a boss is treating his employees in a certain way, right?
Mm.
And it's creating a retention issue, right? Now, I'm asked to say, well, why don't you train the boss and train the employees? So when you train the boss and you train the employees, hopefully the retention issue is going to go away. The boss is going to be nicer, and the employees are going to be smarter or whatever. And that's theoretical. That's something you would do in school and say, yeah, it makes sense. Well, in reality, here's the thing: is people cannot give what they don't have. So if
Mm.
they are not, um, they haven't experienced compassion, they have not experienced hand holding, they have only experienced leg pulling as they were coming up. They cannot, share that with others. And when you're dealing with, especially with social causes, you need so much empathy and so much of putting yourself in other people's shoes, and so much space for both, you know, compassion, but also for execution, because you can't have too much of one or the other, right? And I've told this person, I said, look, the issue is they don't have the capacity. They can fill in a title, they can take the salary, they can do the execution, but in the end, there's a level of dictatorship that kicks in when there has to be a level of leadership,
Mm.
and you have to build the capacity for leadership. And this person is a leader, but for her to create a virality within her team to all of them be leaders, it's more than getting trained by me, or more than lecturing them every 3 months like what to do, and really appealing to them. It's like they really have to be um, there has to be a continuous learning training process. It's not a 3 day training, it's not a 2 day training, it's a 365 days a year type training, which has to be embedded into their operations, and which most people don't take it to be
Mm.
such. They're like, look, this is how work is done here. You don't know these people that we're dealing with. You can make these comments sitting from up there, but this is a different world and blah blah blah. And to some extent, they're right. But if you want people to carry a cause, just remember, it's not their baby. You cannot expect them to take care
Mm.
of your baby like you take care of your baby. It's just
True.
it's just not
Mm.
going to happen. So the closest thing you're going to get to it is that you develop them over years, so you have some sort of how should I say it, a succession plan,
Mm.
you know, or at
And I
least
guess
some options.
that's
Otherwise, you're all or nothing, and that's what you see in 90% of Pakistani companies and NGOs. It's the founder, and then there's a bunch of young people running, and there's an air pocket in the middle. There's no
mm.
succession plan because you can't copy and paste, and that is the reason. Coming back to it, they can't scale.
Mm.
That is
So,
exactly the reason.
so just a question. So
Yeah.
then, in continuation of whatever I've heard so far, would it be fine to say that we can replace vision with adaptable and capable leadership instead of saying it's vision?
No, you can't say that you can replace vision with adaptability. Vision has to be adaptable. It's in itself.
No,
Vision itself
adaptable,
has to be done.
capable
Yeah.
leadership. What I'm trying to
Um,
say is adaptable, capable leadership with a vision that has a technology to enable it that takes it to scalability. Would that be a good analogy?
Yeah. 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 Of
but
course.
but I would say that
It.
the the leadership shouldn't be adaptable. The vision has to be adaptable because, like Jonathan specifically said, that uh, the if you're not being you can say you're not changing yourself to the market forces, and you're only changing to how you think is the right path, then that's what adaptable leadership is. So I define adaptable leadership as that, like saying that I don't like this now, so I'm going to change from, let's say, red to blue. But not the
Mm,
an adaptable vision is that the market says they don't like this, so change it from red to blue. So where the adaptability is, uh, would say that is it an adaptable vision or an adaptable leadership?
I think
no,
I'd
no.
like
both
to
have to be
add in.
I,
adaptable.
I,
uh,
I guess
Yeah. Go
okay.
I'd
ahead,
like to
Jonathan.
add in one thing, just from project management. So I've run project portfolios of all sorts, and the the hardest thing for a new project manager to accept is his project failed, because it's
Mm,
regular that a new risk comes in, a task doesn't get done, a dependency isn't ready, and the plan that you wrote 2 days ago is no longer valid. So, and this can happen so many times during the course of a big project that you have to scrap it. Not only do you have to rewrite the plan, but you even have to sometimes, depending on the time or resource limitations, rewrite the strategy that the plan is trying
mm,
to implement. So, a really good project program manager is prepared to let go of any plan, prepared to
Hmm.
let go of any, because the resources, the time, time scope, the cost, all of those things that we look at are changeable factors every day that passes. So they need to say, this is the vision I want, and this is the when I want it. And that might mean 6, 7, 8 different strategies between when they
Hmm.
start and when they get there. Now, if the vision changes, that's another story altogether. But to be successful project manager, and I'm going to put that in leadership terms in this particular example, you need to be prepared to let go of everything,
mm,
rewrite the strategy, rewrite the underlying plan. It's sacrificable if you really want your vision. Just
mm,
means you're not committed enough if you're not prepared to think of another strategy or rewrite your plan. Because I train project managers as well, and their ego often gets attached to their plan or the strategy because there was so much brainstorming around it.
yeah, of
But
course.
then it's not going to work 1 week later because of
Yeah.
the sponsor pulled out, the investor pulled out. but if you still want that vision, you're going to look
The-
for innovative ways to get there. So the leadership needs to hold on to that and be prepared to sacrifice everything just to make that happen. And that's rare, but that's,
Hmm.
in my opinion, what it requires.
I will just add one more point. Like you have brought up another, like a very interesting topic. Sometimes, the project manager, because he is coming from a project prospect, he does not understand, the business or the model of a business. And because he's not understanding, so sometimes, like the failure is not his project. There are the things which he has not considered. So when he's planning for a project and he's not considering or he's not involving those like the key uh, part or the key what do we say, like a uh, kind of the like people which will be working along with him, so he gets fail. And when he realizes, he finds out that okay, because I was not understanding the model of the business, so due to which we have missed 1 2 3, and because of this, like all of the plan has suddenly failed.
Hmm.
So I think
Shahrukh,
Jonathan
I
has
just,
to leave. Yeah.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you for the good conversation, guys. I have
no
to go
problem.
at the
And thank
moment,
you for
but
coming.
thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Same.
Likewise,
Same.
Jonathan.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you,
we're
Shahrukh.
already planning a part 2, so let's resume from
Yeah.
here afterwards
Yeah.
as well.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah.
Jonathan.
Brilliant.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jonathan. Thank you
Thank you,
so much for the
everyone.
time.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for coming. Yep.
Really
So
appreciate
I
it.
guess
Thank you.
I guess
Yep.
we can call it a wrap for now as well, because
Yeah.
it's past midnight. Exactly like we planned. Exactly like we planned. But
But
yeah, I
thank
guess
God
it's
you're doing it on the weekend.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
easier. But in the coming days, for the next whole week, we have a lot of time. So perhaps we can do it on a daily basis as well.
Shahrukh,
What do you say?
I never believe you. I would
Shahrukh,
actually believe you.
maybe,
The way you're going about it.
You
maybe
never thought I
Shahrukh
would
help
be able
us
to do
make
it
a
so
lot of money. Help us make a lot of money. That would be an easier choice for us then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps once we reach maybe 1 million subscribers, then we make a lot of money with this. But
Let's
I
scale our
guess
Yeah.
pockets, Shahrukh. Let's scale our pockets, please.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. I guess that's also something that we need to do.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So I guess thank you so much again, everyone else also for coming. And let me decide which date we can resume, and I will request all of the same participants so we all have the
Sure.
background for the discussion.
You know what I
Well,
would
I'm just
suggest,
enormous.
if
Yep.
it's just a suggestion.
Mhm.
Um, don't do it serially. Don't do it like part two, three, four back to back. Pepper it
Ah,
across different. Like give us
other.
time to kind of think through the
Yeah.
next phase.
Sure, sure.
Just
We can do
and
that.
mix it up.
Hmm.
Right.
Mm.
This will keep things, let's just say, more colorful.
Exciting.
More
Yeah.
colorful, yeah. That's the right
Yes.
way to
Mhm.
put it.
I had
Okay.
to go there.
Yeah.
It's a dad joke.
I guess no, I guess puns are
That
necessary
too.
for the whole
Yes.
thing to be colorful, and you'll see a lot of those things popping up in most of my marketing material as well. So yeah,
Yes, of
I enjoyed
course.
that sort of humor, you can say. Anyway,
Yeah.
Awesome.
yeah. So this was fun and also very informational.
Informative. Yeah.
Again,
Thank
for
you
yeah,
so much.
thank you
Thank
so
you
much
so
for
That's
much.
coming.
good.
Yeah,
Thank
And
Thank you,
sorry
you.
for
everyone.
jumping in like this. Thank you.
yeah. Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Have a
Take
good
care.
evening.
Bye.
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 You too. Bye.